Men of Reddit. What are some less obvious red flags about men you would want to caution women against? Story 1. This goes for both genders, but don't date someone under the assumption that they'll change something fundamental about themselves. Not fair to either of you. Many moons ago, the first girl I ever dated, I remember thinking, I love this girl, and it would be perfect if only insert several fundamental qualities about her that were not compatible with me. Of course, it didn't work out. Then I repeated that mistake about 6 more times. On the 7th long-term relationship, I remember not being able to come up with anything I would change. We've been together for 10 years, married for 5. She's amazing and perfect. I still wouldn't change a thing. Story 2. If he's dumb, but think he's smart, I was taught this years ago and tried to use it in a job interview that I was wildly underqualified for. I was looking for my first job in HR, and this company interviewed me to be their entire HR department. I didn't know the scope of the role until the interview. They asked me how I would approach a task, and I said, I've never come across it in practice, but I am very diligent in carrying out research and finding solutions to answers that I don't have. Basically told them they could Google anything they needed HR for. I didn't get the job. Story 3. If a guy's doing the minimum of what you want in a long-term relationship at the beginning, it's going to be well below your standards after a few years. I would expect about half of what you see in the first year. Story 4. When someone is declaring multiple times they're not a certain way without prompt, they are actually that way. I'm a nice guy. Repeat several times in the first few dates. He was in fact not a nice guy. Some would even go as far as to describe him as an Story 5. If you hear a little voice inside you that says, I can change this man, he's not the man for you. My mom taught us, don't worry if a guy dresses like a dork, that is one thing you can change. But make sure he's good on the inside, you can't change that. Story 6. Don't trust a man who can joke about others but can't take it. I worked with a guy who loved to take the piss out of others. Within days of working there, he was talking about people behind their backs, while the rest of us at the shop just kind of tolerated it. Eventually, the day came where he proved his thin skin. We had a big pizza box and we all drew caricatures of each other on it. The shortest guy in the shop was drawn absurdly small. Someone drew me with an afro, poking fun at me being bald. He drew one guy with an enormous nose. It was a car shop, so talking was the norm there. Everyone was in on it, so everyone was cool with it, or at least should have been. So I joined in and drew this guy as a donut, because he was grotesquely overweight and ate donuts literally the entire day. He blew a gasket over it, tried to call my new place of employment to get me fired over it, and threatened me if I was ever to do it again. He then jumped in his truck and drove circles around the parking lot before leaving on a 2-hour lunch break. People who can't take it but love to dish it are the worst. Story 7. You'll be able to tell if a guy's nice by how he behaves. If a guy tells you he's nice, ignore that. That's meaningless. Story 8. Any aversion to taking responsibility. The older I get, the more I find that men I respect most aren't the ones with great achievements to their names, but rather the ones who aren't afraid to own their crap. I usually flush mine. Story 9. Blaming their childhood and treating you and others like rubbish. Had an ex that would always blame his exes for why they went wrong, and went as far as calling his recent exes because she would want him to watch their son to have me time. I ignored so many flags from that dude. Crazy. Story 10. This one is extremely obvious, yet I've seen dozens of women still make the same mistake. If he's rude, selfish, and possessive before you're dating, he will not change once you start dating. I don't know why so many women think that a man will have an epiphany and become better once they get in a relationship. People very rarely change. If anything, I would say he would be on his best behavior when you first meet, which means that his behavior is only going to, at best, stay the same or get worse. Story 11. When they don't respect the word no, even in the most benign of circumstances, as above, so below. Most people are nice enough to be consistent with their personalities. How they act with little stuff is how they will act with big stuff. When someone tells you who they are, believe them. Story 12. If anything happens to him and he always shifts blame to someone else or the situation, that is a big red flag. Sooner or later, everything will be your fault. Also, if their story, complaint, rant, or explanation sounds too one-sided, again, unable to take blame themselves, they're lacking empathy. Red flag. Yeah, I call these guys Calamity Johns, as women would of course be Calamity Janes. Story 13. If they behave like they know everything, change is certainly not their cup of tea. You find that those who have the most knowledge are the most humble about it. The more you know you don't know. Story 14. When you have to cater to his needs and wants over your own with no compromise. It can be something as only watching shows that he wants, or doing things only he wants to do, or ordering takeout that only he likes. Dated a guy who would ask every Friday night, where do you want to eat? I'd throw out my ideas and he'd just say no. Unfortunately, it took me a long time to realize I was really playing a game of figure out what he wants to eat. Eventually, I'd do one suggestion. He'd say no, and then I'd tell him he had to offer something up. That became an accusation in how I'm incapable of making decisions. I worked successfully as a project manager, making decisions all day. I just wanted to eat without it being a problem. That accusation of indecisiveness really pointed out how much this was just weird power dynamics it was playing out. Story 15. If they don't like dinosaurs. What monster doesn't like dinosaurs? Story 16. If they verbally attack you in an argument rather than discuss the issue, if they constantly badmouth other guys. Story 17. A friend of mine dated a guy who apparently everyone wanted to fight. At the gym, this guy over here wants to throw down. At a mall, those guys look like they want to get hit. At the grocery store, this dude is looking at me like he wants to go outside. No one feels like fighting you. You're just on steroids. Story 18. When he looks to you as his sole source of happiness, entertainment, this usually means that they lack the ability to manage their own emotions or have healthy coping mechanisms. In addition, if you're in it for the long term, there will be times that you will get sick of each other, and a guy needs some hobbies that can take his attention away to give you space. This can be an open door for manipulation. So true. The whole, I hate everyone except you is not quirky or cute or romantic. It's a huge red flag that they don't know how to manage a social life. Story 19. If he starts throwing tantrums over petty things, there is worse on the horizon. He's not passionate, he's unstable. I broke up with my ex because he had a full-on tantrum because of a board game. They were playing Civilization. He declared a truce with another player, went on to aggressively attack the other players, then completely freaked out because the player he had a truce with spent turns building up and then attacking him while he was overcommitted on the board. He legit tried to throw the guy out of the game store that he no longer worked for and ban him for life. I was grateful because it finally opened my eyes as to what a child he was. Story 20. If he doesn't want to talk about awkward stuff while you're dating, then he might not want to talk about awkward problems in the relationship. Story 21. A green flag to look for is long-term friendships. Long-term friends require good communication skills and emotional intelligence. It's also a pretty good indicator that they're willing to compromise for someone's emotional needs. Story 22. So about his 3 last relationships and why they ended. If it is always the girl that was crazy, it's him. He's crazy. I briefly dated a guy who told me that 4 of his ex-girlfriends had restraining orders against him. They were all crazy. I told him that I didn't want to see him anymore, and he was genuinely surprised and asked why. I said, well, either you're the problem or you have very bad judgment skills in choosing partners. And neither of those is okay. Then he texted me, maybe I should start thinking about murder. Pretty terrifying. Glad I got out so early. If it stinks everywhere you go, there's probably dog shit into your shoe. Story 23. Many men only know how to relationship flirt. They'll say things like, I'm looking for something long-term, when really they just want to hook up. In my dating days, I always had way more respect for a man that could be honest about wanting a hookup and didn't try to butter me up with sugary lies first. The relationship flirters are so skeezy and exactly the reason the word F-boy exists. Story 24. I'm coming in late, but this is something I've tried to teach all my daughters. Men will show you how they feel with their actions. If they say they care, but don't put in the effort, listen to their actions, not the words. Good advice for dating, but also good advice for life, really. Story 25. If he's a selfish lover in bed, he'll likely be a selfish partner in life. Story 26. Overpleasers. They never seem to have their own opinion, especially if it conflicts with yours. Yes men are for corporations, not relationships. I have a friend like this. I call it being a relationship chameleon, because all of a sudden the things she likes, be it hobbies, interests, music, movies, etc., becomes his favorites, even to the point that it could be stuff he actively hated before. Overpleasers or overcompensators often will get angry at the partner after a while because the extreme servitude and effort isn't reciprocated as well. I did this for you, what about me? Attitude can get a bit scary. Story 27. As someone who is very guilty of this, focusing a ton on you and your needs, but hardly paying attention to their own. Someone like this can come across as sweet, selfless, and caring, but they're actually avoiding their own problems to focus on yours. You're not a partner to them, you're a distraction, and even they themselves may not realize it. It also means that they may not be self-aware enough to be working on themselves. Everything has ripple effects, whether it's them not realizing their poor sleep habits is making them cranky and unable to put their weight in chores, to not seeing how the trauma is wreaking havoc in their ability to have a healthy relationship. Get you a man who pays attention to himself in the right ways, because that means not only is there room for you each to grow and improve as individuals, but also for you to grow and improve as a couple. Hey guys, just a quick little side note. If you like the stories and love listening to how I deliver them, please press the subscribe button and click on the notification bell so you'll get notified of my future uploads. Thank you, now back to the stories. Story 28. If he isn't on the same level of maturity as you, regardless of age, don't go for it. One of you will turn into a parent. Story 29. If he's mean to servers but nice to you, he's not a nice person. Alternatively, some people can be nice to others, servers, or any person outside, but create a storm at home. That lesson really sunk in as I was driving his car back to his place after having left work unexpectedly, because he needed to be picked up from the dentist's after oral surgery. He was in a lot of pain but polite and friendly to every nurse there, that proceeded to growl and rage at me the entire time. Then when we got to CVS, he was a dream to the pharmacy staff, then an to me when I dropped him off at home. So here I was driving his car back to his house after getting dropped off by a coworker back at the dentist's so he'd have his vehicle the next day, after being verbally abused for the last 2 hours. It was like night and day between how he treated me and how he treated everyone else. Story 30. When he says, "Don't worry about working, I'll take care of you." Does he mean it's okay for now? Or does he mean he low-key doesn't want you to have the means to leave if and when things go bad? There is a huge difference between support and sabotage, but they come in a similar looking package sometimes. Story 31. Lots of gossip. If he talks about other people, he'll talk about you. Watch for how he's talking about other people. If he's always making the people he talks about look good, chances are he's talking you up to his friends too. Story 32. Sober man trying to pick up super drunk women. Story 33. Constantly indirect. It's leaving wiggle room so he can claim he wasn't lying later. Story 34. I've seen stories of guys who rage and break their things when gaming. As someone who has been playing video games for about 20 years now, that is not normal, nor is it okay. Like swearing, sure, that's understandable, but getting angry and breaking stuff ain't it. It's just violent behavior and a red flag. Story 35. Love bombing. If you guys aren't in high school struck by puppy love, this is just a manipulation tactic. Just my opinion. But somebody who respects the women or men they're dating aren't going to tell you they love you and see a future with you in the first couple of weeks, especially at the beginning of dating. 100 roses, going out to restaurants almost every other night, expensive and flashy gifts. All of those things are meant to distract you from a severely person and trap you in an emotionally prison. Once those boundaries have been bulldozed down, it's very hard to establish them later on when he becomes far too much. I tell my friends this all the time. The ones that don't listen, unfortunately, always have stories after a couple of months. Story 36. Don't ever be fooled by how a man treats you. Look at how he treats unattractive women and other men. I would also add if he comes from a culture that is rather macho or sexist. Look at how he treats his sisters. Story 37. If he tries to make you feel crazy or invalidate your feelings for being uncomfortable about something or for having boundaries, run. Story 38. As a man and someone who dates men, here's a big one that may seem obvious on the surface, but isn't always easy to listen to. If you get even a tiny gut feeling that tells you, hey, this guy kind of reminds me of insert terrible man, ex, or person, you should listen to it. I've never gotten that feeling where it hasn't been right in the end. Listen to yourself. You might not know why you feel that way, but there's always something to it. Story 39. If he's not kind to strangers like people in the service industry, chances are he's hiding his true character when he's with you, and it'll eventually converge to how he treats others. Story 40. If what he loves about you is how you make him feel and or the things you do for him rather than who you are, what you like, your goals, and shared interests. Story 41. Emotional reactivity, anger, blaming, and shaming in arguments or times of stress, get out now. Story 42. Him making fun of you in front of his friends or your friends. Cute teasing can be mildly tolerated, but actually making fun of you? No thanks. 2 things to remember to never make fun of. Someone's body, like birthmarks or deformities, and someone's laugh. They never get to choose either, and I've seen people scared to laugh or enjoy themselves too much for fear of being mocked for their weird laughs. Story 43. When a man talks way more than they listen. Story 44. The men who are 40 plus but still act like they're just fresh out of high school, spends money like it's no tomorrow without a plan for the future, looks at every girl as a score of a fun time, flakes on you for games or to hang out with bros and thinks of his own self over you. Story 45. Men aren't nearly as complicated as women want them to be. Listen to their words. Take note of their actions. Notice what they don't do and don't say. I've always had female friends, and it blows my mind how often women seem to believe that a dummy is just pretending and there's actually a prince in there waiting to come out. Story 46. No one mentioned the replacement mom issue. I unfortunately had some friends who thought that once they get into a serious relationship, that it's the woman's sole purpose to clean after them. No man children. If you're constantly asking your guy to help out around the house or with kids, etc., it will eventually break you. You're not his mother. Even if he happily does it when you ask, having to ask every day will be exhausting and raise contempt because you'll want him to recognize what needs to be done, not be told. Story 47. If he believes relationships without arguments or screaming matches are doomed for lack of passion, he probably hasn't learned to communicate in a healthy way. Story 48. You want a kind man, not a nice man or guy. Nice is transactional, kindness is given freely. Story 49. As a father, things I've tried to teach my daughter to be aware of are subtle manipulations. In a healthy relationship, there is no let, as in letting you do stuff or asking for permission. Watch for subtle controlling, passive-aggressive comments or remarks. If he attempts to drive a wedge between you and your friends or family, move on. Watch and listen to how he treats other people. If you don't have self-respect, he won't treat you with respect. If he doesn't call for days and acts like it's no big deal, move on. If he's clingy, definitely move on. Having a victim mentality attracts predatory behavior. If anyone treats you less than how you feel you deserve, it is imperative you deal with it early and quickly. If there's no meaningful communication or compromise, don't waste your time. Life is too short to deal with a possessive, jealous, controlling, manipulative, emotionally stunted, or wrecked man. You can't fix people. Protect yourself and move on with your life without that person and don't look back. It's okay. Breakups are tough when you've invested your time and heart, but you'll be better off alone than with someone like that. If he scares you, come to your dad's house. If he's smart, he won't follow you here. Story 50. If you have a guy friend and they say that another guy gives off weird vibes or only wants one thing, consider their opinion. Many of us have a sense about these things. Story 51. If he disregards your opinion about something small, he will disregard your opinion about something large. That can go pretty dark pretty quickly. Every single questionable thing a person does that you excuse because you want to believe the best about that person should be taken as a yellow flag. Step back from the situation, assess it logically and in context of other behaviors or opinions. If you continually have to interpret their behavior only in the best possible light for it to be okay, you should run. When you look at someone through rose-colored glasses, all the red flags just look like flags. Wanda, BoJack Horseman. Story 52. Men who make fun of the way someone looks, especially older men. Many guys do this when they're young and obnoxious, but most grow out of it. You can have the thought that someone is butt ugly, but you keep it to yourself, or at least you should. It takes maturity and the realization that people are born who they are, and not all of them are eye candy. It's gross for the person on the receiving end, and it makes the guy saying it look like a mean-spirited dummy. Story 53. If he mentions that he's a nice guy every few sentences, stay away from him. Story 54. Best to wait for him to get over his issues with his mother before starting a relationship. It's better to know why they don't get along. It may not always be the guy's fault. Story 55. If they don't believe in or make fun of platonic friendships between men and women. Story 56. Don't date someone who dismisses or invalidates your feelings even in the smallest ways and not see anything wrong with it. All feelings matter, regardless of how insignificant or weird or even disgusting they may be, and talking about them and being understood in return is the first step towards a healthy and safe relationship. If your partner has the inability to realize this is likely signs of deeper problems under the surface, and you don't want to discover that further into the relationship, also avoid anyone that enjoys talking crap about others or enjoys sharing drama. It may seem cool and funny, especially when he's got such an opinion, but that's also reflective that he's the kind of person who enjoys judging others and looking for emotions to stir. So imagine what he'll do when you break up. Story 57. My husband told me tonight that if a man is bad at pulling out, he's full of shit. Guys can feel the building just like women, so they know damn well when to pull out before. Alternative red flag. He considers pulling out a valid means of contraception. Alright guys, thanks for listening. For more videos like this, don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel. Thanks for watching.